They call Berat the city of 1,000 windows. And I'll be honest, that name alone is enough to make you stop and look twice. But the more we started researching Berat, the more we realized this isn't just a pretty Albanian city with a great nickname. This is one of those places where history, daily life, food, scenery, and affordability all seem to come together in a really interesting way. And since Diane and I are planning to move to Albania in March of 2027, we're looking at places like this very differently now. We're not just asking, would this be fun to visit? We're asking, could we actually spend time here? Could we live here for a while? Could this be part of our Albanian story?
And before anybody says it, no, we have not been to Berat yet. So this is not us pretending to be experts or acting like we have walked every street and eaten every meal there. This is our research deep dive. We're looking at what the data says, what travelers and expats seem to mention consistently, what the costs look like, what healthcare access looks like, what transportation looks like, and whether Berat can realistically make sense for someone like us or maybe someone like you. So today we're talking about Berat, Albania, pronounced roughly Berat. And we're looking at the big question. Could we live here? And more specifically, could someone live here for around $1,000 a month?
Hmm. And if you're new here, welcome to the Europats. We're Matt and Diane, and we're currently in Texas researching our move to Albania first, with France still being the long term goal later on. We're not selling some fantasy version of the moving abroad. Not at all. We're trying to figure this out in real time. Costs, healthcare, visas, housing, transportation, all of it.
The whole kit and caboodle.
Yes.
And if you've watched us before, welcome back. You already know that we like to look at the pretty parts, but we also like to ask the practical questions because it's one thing to see a beautiful town on YouTube. It's another thing to ask, where would we buy our groceries? How would we get to the doctor? Could we get around there without a car? Is it safe? And what does it actually cost? So let's get into Beirut. Berat is one of Albania's most famous historic cities and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This city is known for its Ottoman era architecture, those white houses stacked along the hillside, and the windows that seem to look out over the city from every direction. That is where the nickname comes from, the city of 1,000 windows. And when you look at photos of Berat, you immediately understand why people remember it.
The city has three main historic areas that come up again and again in research. There's Mangalem, pronounced Man-ga-lem,
Hmm.
which is the quarter with those famous white Ottoman houses climbing up that hillside. There's Gorica across the Osum River, and then there's Kala, which means castle. Berat Castle sits above the city, and from everything we've read, this is one of the most interesting parts of Berat because it isn't just an empty ruin. People still actually live in the castle walls.
That's so cool. That's so cool, y'all.
That would be.
What's your address? It's in the castle. You know the one. Mhm. But this really did stand out to us because when we think of a castle, we usually think of a preserved historic site where you walk around, you take pictures, you maybe read a sign or something about it, and then you leave. But Beirut Castle seems to be different. It's a living neighborhood. There are homes, there are small shops, churches, ruins, and everyday life happening inside those ancient walls. And that's the kind of thing that we find fascinating. And not because we've experienced it yet, because we haven't, but because it feels like the kind of place where history isn't separated from daily life. It's just there.
From what we've seen, the walk to the Berat Castle is not exactly a casual little stroll. It's steep, It's cobblestoned and it looks like one of those places where the wrong shoes could dang sure ruin your whole day. So if we go, good walking shoes are already on our list. No cute, I'm just here for the pictures type shoes. Actual tennis shoes. The kind where your feet don't file a complaint halfway up the hill.
No flip flops. Note to self. I'm always in flip flops,
She
y'all.
is a flip flop person.
My feet get hot. Welcome to menopause. Inside the castle area, there are a few historic sites that come up often. One is the Onufri Museum, pronounced Onufri, which is connected to the 16th century icon painter Onufri. He was known for a very distinctive red color, often referred to as Onufri's red. There's also the Holy Trinity Church, the Red Mosque ruins, and lots of narrow stone lanes that seem to wind through the castle neighborhood. And again, we haven't been there yet, so we're not going to describe it like we personally wandered through every alley, but it definitely sounds like the kind of place where you would want to slow down. Not rush, not check it off a list, but take your time.
Go slow.
Slowly.
And then, when you look down from the castle area, you get that famous view over Mangalam. That's the view people associate with Berat. White houses stacked up the hillside, dark wooden windows, terracotta roofs, the river below, and the Goritsa Bridge connecting the two sides. The Osum River runs through Berat, and Goritsa sits across from Mangalam. Historically, these areas had different communities and religious identities, which is part of what gives Berat so much cultural depth. And that's one thing we keep noticing as we research Albania. It's not one note, there are layers
It's like an onion.
upon layers,
You've got to peel the onion.
and then make yourself cry.
We're not going to be crying though.
We'll be
Well,
crying with joy.
yeah, hopefully. Now, this is always one of our practical questions because a place can be beautiful all day long, but if we're going to spend real time somewhere, we want to know what day to day life might feel like. Would we just walk around and stare at buildings? Because listen, I love a pretty building as much as anybody, but at some point, well, at many points, I'm going to need some coffee. We're going to need groceries. We're going to have to do laundry. And I'm going to want to sit and people watch.
From what we've researched, Berat seems like the kind of city where the pace is a lot slower. It doesn't look like a huge chaotic city. It looks more like a place where you walk, you explore, you sit at a cafe, visit the market, take in the views, and use it as a base for the nearby nature trips. Now, that does sound appealing to us in some ways, but it also means we'd have to be honest about whether we'd want a quieter lifestyle. Because not everybody wants quiet. Some people say they want peaceful until peaceful shows up, and then there's nothing open after 8 o'clock.
Preach. Preach. That is so true. And this is where we have to know ourselves. We like quiet. We like simple, but we also like convenience. So with Barat, the question would be, does it have enough of what we need for daily life? And based on our research, it seems like Barat has local shops, restaurants, cafes, basic services, and a historic center that is very walkable. But it is not Tirana. So if someone wants big city energy or lots of specialists, big shopping centers, and endless restaurant choices, major international conveniences, Beirut may feel small. For us, though, small may not be a negative. It just depends on how connected it is to everything else.
Let's talk about food, because this is one of the things that makes Barat sound really interesting. But we're going to be careful here. We're not going to go name dropping restaurants and act like we know what they're like because we haven't eaten there. And the internet loves nothing more than catching you acting like you know something you definitely don't.
We know nothing.
We're newbies.
We know nothing. So instead of saying this place is amazing or that restaurant is the best, what we can say is this. In our research, Berat seems to be known for traditional Albanian food, family run places, homemade style meals, and dishes that are more rustic and inland than you might find along the coast. So instead of a beach town seafood vibe, Berat sounds more like slow cooked, hearty, comfort style food. And honestly, that doesn't sound too bad at all.
It does not sound bad one bit.
Not one iota.
A few dishes come up often when researching Albanian food in this region. One is frjeza, which is usually made with peppers, tomatoes, cheese, and sometimes with meat baked into this rich, comforting dish. God, that sounds so good. Then there's the kofte, which are Albanian style meatballs, and tava kosi, which is a lamb baked in a yogurt and egg sauce. I'll be honest, lamb baked in yogurt sauce is not something that I grew up eating in Texas. But I am interested. I'm very interested.
Me too, and I'm starving.
Yes.
I've eaten today. Well, I've snacked in our snack and chat, our live. P.S. Live every Sunday at 1. You also join us. And I like that food tells you something about a place. It's not just about what's on the plate, it's about pace, family, tradition, and how people gather. So, when we eventually get to Albania, this is one of the things that I am really looking forward to. Not just trying the food, but learning what meals mean there. And until we actually experience it ourselves, we'll keep it honest. This is what the research suggests, not what we personally know yet. Stop coming for us.
That was coming.
Another thing that makes Berat interesting is what's around it, because Berat itself is historic and beautiful, but the surrounding region also has some pretty major natural scenery. The place that comes up the most is Osum Canyon. It's often described as one of Albania's most dramatic natural areas with cliffs, river views, hiking, and, depending on the season, rafting.
Now, Osum Canyon is usually described as being roughly around an hour or so from Berat by car, depending on where you're going and road conditions. And this is where having a car might really matter. Because, yes, you can research tours and transport options, but if we're living there long term, we'd want to know how easy it really is to get out and explore without relying on someone else every single time. There's also Bogova Waterfall, pronounced Bogova, which comes up as a popular nature stop in the region. So Barat isn't just look at the old buildings and go on home. Bye. There's a whole outdoor side to the area too.
And that combination is what makes it interesting to us. History in town, nature nearby, low cost of living, a slower pace. But again, slower pace can be wonderful or it can feel limiting depending on what season of life that you're in and what you need around you. So now let's talk about the practical stuff: weather, safety, healthcare, transportation, and cost, because that's where the fantasy either gets stronger or starts to fall apart.
Let's start with the weather. According to Weather Sparks, not Diane and Matt,
That's right.
Berat has hot summers and cool, wet winters. July is typically the hottest month with an average high of around 91 degrees Fahrenheit, which is also 33 degrees Celsius, and an average low around 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. January is usually the coldest month with an average high of around 51 degrees Fahrenheit or 11 degrees Celsius, and an average low around 35 degrees Fahrenheit or about 2 degrees Celsius. So, no, this is not typical tropical beach weather year round. It has seasons.
And honestly, that's not necessarily a bad thing for us. We don't need endless summer. We've had Texas summer. We are familiar with the surface of the sun lifestyle, and we don't like it.
Yes.
We don't like it. Coming into that right now, coming into hell season.
Yeah, but it could be our last one.
God, with any luck at all. So, a place with warm summers, cooler winters, and nice shoulder seasons sounds pretty stinking good to me. But the thing to remember is that winter can be damp and gray. Again, don't see anything wrong with that. What's wrong?
She likes having it overcast,
Dreary,
dreary.
drizzly.
Yeah,
That's why we're looking at Brittany, France. I think it might be a little too cold though. But as far as the dreariness goes, sign me up.
that's her weather.
So even if the temperatures don't look extreme on paper, damp cold can feel colder than the number suggests. And that matters if you're someone who struggles with gloomy weather. And to that I say, what is wrong with you? It's fine.
Spring and fall seem like they would be the sweet spot. Comfortable temperatures, more pleasant walking weather, and probably the best time to really enjoy the city without melting on the cobblestone. So weather-wise, Berat, it looks very livable to us. At least it does to me. But summer heat is still something to plan around. And if we're renting there, we'd want to know about air conditioning, heating, insulation, and how well the apartment handles humidity. Because a cheap apartment is only charming until you're sweating and feeling moist through your shirt and wrapped in blankets indoors.
Ew. That's such an icky word. Ew. So now let's talk about safety because this always comes up. The US State Department currently lists Albania as level 2, which means exercise increased caution. And the reason listed is crime. They specifically mention that law enforcement's ability to assist can be limited in some areas, especially remote areas. And they also mention organized crime and targeted violence. So we don't want to oversell it and say, oh, everything is perfectly safe everywhere. That's not how we talk about any country.
At the same time, we also don't want to make it sound scarier than it really is. Crowdsourced crime data from Numbeo rates Albania overall as moderate for crime, with lower concerns in areas like mugging or robbery compared with other places. But Numbeo is crowdsourced, so we take that as one piece of the picture, not the entire picture. For Berat specifically, the data is thinner, and that's important to say. Smaller cities often don't have the same depth of crime statistics you'd find for a capital city. So we would look at a mix of official travel advisories, local reports, expat feedback, and our own experience once we are there.
But from what we have seen so far, Berat does not come across as a high risk city. It comes across as smaller, quieter, and more tourism oriented in the historic center. But common sense still applies. Watch your bag, be aware at night, don't flash money, don't assume that small means nothing ever happens. And if you're staying outside the historic center or going into less familiar areas, pay attention to your surroundings. That's not fear. That's just called being an adult. I want to be an adult.
I was just about to say the same thing.
I want to grow up. Wow. I just aged myself.
Yeah.
The doghouse is going.
Doghouse.
Damn, we just had so much rain. You're fixing to feel it.
Yes, I am. I'm already feeling it right now.
Rude. Healthcare is where we always slow down because for retirees and new retirees, this is not a small detail. Bharat does have local healthcare services, including hospitals and clinics, but it is not the same as being in Tirana. For more advanced care, specialists, private hospitals, or more modern facilities, Tirana is where many people would likely go. Expat healthcare resources consistently point out that private hospitals and more advanced services are concentrated heavily in Tirana.
And that matters because if you're healthy and just need basic care, maybe Berat works fine. But if you have a chronic condition, need regular specialists, need certain medications, or just want to be close to a major hospital, then Berat might feel a little far out. The drive from Berat to Tirana is often listed around 2 hours or a little more by bus, depending on traffic and route. Giraffe Travel lists Berat to Tirana bus trips at about 2 hours and 15 minutes, with ticket prices starting at around 6 to 7 euros. So healthcare access isn't impossible, but it is something to plan around.
And this is where private health insurance comes in. Many expats in Albania choose private or international health insurance, especially if they want broader access or more predictable care. Private health care in Albania is generally described as more affordable, a lot more affordable than in the US, but it is still an added monthly or annual cost that needs to be a part of your budget. So when we talk about living on $1,000 a month, we have to be honest. That might cover basic living expenses if you're careful. But if you add in private insurance, prescriptions, dental visits, specialist visits, or frequent trips to Tirana, your real budget could go higher. And that's exactly the kind of thing we want to know before we move.
Transportation in Berat is another practical piece. Within the historic areas, Berat looks walkable, but that walkability comes with cobblestones, hills, uneven surfaces, and stairs. So, yes, it may be walkable, but walkable does not always mean easy. That's important for people with knee issues like me, hip issues, sometimes like me, balance concerns,
Also, yeah.
or anyone who doesn't want their daily errands to feel like a medieval fitness challenge.
For getting between cities, buses and vans, often called furgons, are a big part of transportation in Albania. And like we said before, Berat connects to Tirana by bus is usually about 2 hours ish or so. There are multiple daily buses between Berat and Tirana. And again, those cost around 6 or 7 euros, depending on the operator. So you can get around without a car, but whether you'd want to live without a car is a totally different question. I don't see us getting a car.
No. But it could make things easier for stuff like grocery runs, nature trips, doctor visits, or getting to Tirana when needed and not having to depend on a bus. But having a car also means parking, fuel, insurance, maintenance, and learning how driving works in Albania. So that's another budget line people forget. Now you might say, oh, I can live there for $1,000 a month. And maybe you can. But if you add a car, healthcare, eating out, and weekend trips, now we're having a whole different conversation.
Okay, let's get to the number on the thumbnail. Could you live in Berat for $1,000 a month? Based on the research, for one person living carefully, yeah, it appears possible. Living cost lists Berat as very affordable, with a one-bedroom apartment in the city center around $213 a month, a cheaper one-bedroom around $161 a month. Utilities for one person around $52 a month, and internet around $20 a month. It also estimates the monthly cost of living for one person, including rent, at around $794. But, and this is a big but, that does not mean watch it. Watch y'all. Oh no! Oh no, sir! I would think we would all like to know what are you thinking?
How big is it? That's what we want to know. I know y'all are thinking the same thing.
Oh my. But that does not mean everyone will live comfortably
Words are hard.
on that amount.
Because budget depends on lifestyle. If you rent simply, cook at home, walk a lot, use buses, don't need frequent private health care, and don't expect a Western style apartment with all the comforts, then $1,000 a month for one person looks very realistic. For a couple, it might still be possible if you're very careful, but I'd be more comfortable estimating a little bit higher. Maybe $1,300 to $1,800 a month for a couple who wants some breathing room. And that could go higher if you want a nicer apartment, a car, private health insurance, regular restaurant meals, or frequent trips.
And this is where we always try to be respectful because low cost for us does not mean life is easy for locals. Living cost lists the median after tax salary in Berat around $494 per month, which means these low prices still have a totally different meaning for local residents. So when Americans look at Berat and say, wow, that's cheap, we need to remember we're often looking at it with outside income, and that changes everything. It doesn't make the place cheap in the same way for everyone who lives there.
That's a really important point, and it's one reason why we try not to talk about these places like they're just bargains on a shelf. These are real communities. People live there, people work there, people are raising families there. So, yes, affordability is one reason Bharat interests us. But we want to approach that with humility because moving abroad isn't just about finding a cheaper life, it's about learning how to live respectfully in someone else's home.
So, who might Bharat be good for? Based on what we've researched, Bharat could be a good fit for someone who wants a slower pace, history, beautiful surroundings, lower costs, walkable areas, and a more traditional Albanian feel. It might appeal to retirees, slow travelers, digital nomads, or people who don't need constant big city stimulation.
But it may not be ideal for someone who needs major health care nearby, wants lots of nightlife, needs a perfect public transportation, or wants everything to be modern and convenient. And that's okay. Not every place is for every person. That's kind of the whole point of this research. We're not trying to crown one city as the best. We're trying to figure out what fits. And for Bharat, that fit seems to depend on whether you want beauty and simplicity more than convenience. So after looking at Bharat, here's my honest take. I'm interested. I don't know if I'd want it as our first landing spot in Albania because I still think Tirana may be the place to go to start for our paperwork and all that legal stuff. But I absolutely think that Bharat is a place where you can go and spend a little bit of time. Bharat feels like one of those places where we need to experience it slowly, not just rush in, take pictures, and bon voyage, take off and leave.
That's France. See what I did there? But seriously, I agree with Matt on this one. Barat feels like a place that could be really special if you're in the right season of life for it. It seems slower, historic, beautiful, and more affordable than many places that we've researched, but we'd still want to test it with real life questions. Where would we stay? How easy is the grocery shopping? How do we feel walking around at night? Could we handle the hills and the cobblestones? My knees probably could not because I'm old. So that's probably a no. How easy is it to get to Tirana if we need to? And most importantly, does it feel like a place where we could settle into a routine because living somewhere is not the same as loving pictures of it. But all of this comes with a caveat: cost change, rent changes, healthcare access depends on your needs. Crime data can be incomplete, especially in smaller cities, and crowdsourced sites are helpful, but they are not perfect. So we treat this as research, not the gospel.
So this is the best picture we can put together before actually being on the ground. And once we get to Albania, we'll be able to compare the research to the real life. That's the part we're really looking forward to because sometimes the internet gets it right. And sometimes the internet is out here acting like one person's bad Tuesday is an entire country.
Now, we want to hear from you guys. Could you see yourself living in Berat? Would the slower pace appeal to you? Or would you rather be in a bigger city like Tirana, closer to healthcare, transportation, and more conveniences? Let us know in the comments because these conversations really do help us as we keep researching.
And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. That helps YouTube know that this kind of research is useful and it helps others find the channel. And if you're new here, we'd love to have you subscribe and follow along as we prepare for our move from Texas to Albania.
You can also support the Europats in a few extra ways. We have our Patreon, even though it's free, where we share extra notes, behind the scene thoughts, and additional resources. You can also buy us a coffee if you want to toss a little caffeine into the research fund. We also have merch if you would like to check out our merch store. And if you see the join button here on YouTube, you can become a channel member and support us that way too. No pressure at all, but every bit helps us keep researching, filming, and sharing our journey with you guys. And we usually go live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central. You really should join us over there. We have a great group. We say it all the time. It's our favorite part of the week. We just hang out, nothing serious, and just talk about whatever comes to mind. Today, people got a tour of the backyard. Our house is for sale. So we showed them the backyard and my hydrangeas, which, let's be honest, are stunning.
They're blooming.
They are a blooming. But anyway, you guys have a great week. We will see y'all next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central. Bye, y'all.
Bye bye.